What to do to protect your bonsai in winter and to make sure they're nice, happy and healthy in early spring. Hi, this is Jelle, growing bonsai, and today we're looking at winter protection in bonsai and where do you keep your bonsai in winter. You have a lot of insects that overwinter on your bonsai and they can do damage during winter. It is now late fall, temperature is really quickly dropping. I'm wearing my winter coat and in fact this is probably one of the last videos of the year that I will be taping outside. Today it is still nice weather, it's sunny, it's dry, good weather to be outside. So I'm looking at my trees and I'm thinking, color in the leaves. The leaves are starting to drop. Yes, winter is really on its way, fall is in full swing and now it is time to start looking what do I do with my trees to make sure they come through winter. Now to do this you first need to decide what sort of bonsai do I have. Strictly speaking, 3 different types. The first type's your tropical bonsai. What do you do with those? Then you have your Mediterranean trees. Where do you keep those? And of course the regular hardy trees. What do you do with those? Let's look at the tropical bonsai. To be honest, most of my tropical bonsai are already inside. I keep those in my living room, in the office space, in whatever windowsill I have. I don't do anything special for them, they just move from outside inside. In the process of bringing them inside, I prune them back, I spray them with insecticide and then I put them on the windowsill just to keep there. Of course, you can provide a much better environment with grow lights and things like that. I don't do that. They do quite well in the windowsill. In spring they might not look all that happy, but now my Mediterranean species, I have olives, I have bougainvilleas, I have pomegranates. They are not really frost hardy, but they can endure a little bit of frost. So what I do with these, well actually my bougainvillea I already put inside. It is flowering at the moment and I do want to enjoy the flowers, so those I keep in the living room. Olives however do not like warm temperatures at all and therefore they stay outside. The same with my pomegranates. They stay outside until I've had 1 or 2 nights of frost and then I typically move them into a shed or into the garage to protect them from further frost. If I get frost for a couple of nights, they go into the shed. Once it clears up and temperatures come up again, then they go outside again. The rest of the time, I just keep them outside in my garden. And then pretty much all of my other trees, they are regular hardy trees for my region. So I don't do all that much. Now, this actually brings me to another question. What is the climatic region that you are growing your bonsai in? To me this is a really important question, because if you are in a region that doesn't get deep frost, say more than -10, -15 Celsius that is. -10 Celsius in Fahrenheit. Okay, if you live in a region that doesn't get much colder than that, in fact you don't need to do all that much for hardy species. What you can do is you can just take your bonsai and once it has dropped its leaves, you just put it down on the ground. If you do put your trees down on the ground and you store them for a couple of months in the same place, make sure you remove all the leaves and you don't leave anything on the substrate and you just put it in a corner. That stops overwintering insects as well. Protect it from wind, protect it from direct sun and your tree will be fine over winter. You don't need to do all that much more. These trees, they're all adjusted to be frozen over winter. What they do not like however is to have the roots completely frozen through and then stand in full sun or full wind. The roots of some of these species are a little bit sensitive. Think of your yews, they don't really like deep frost on the roots, but most of the hardy species, they can deal with it. Now what happens if you put this tree in full sun and in the wind, when it is completely frozen, the branches, they will thaw, they will get a little bit more active and they start evaporating water. The branches will dry out. So most of the time frost damage to a hardy species is not actually damage of the frost directly, but it is the drying out of the branches and desiccating of the plant. So if you get long-term frost and you don't have snow, mind you, snow is an insulator for wind, for water. If your tree is fully covered in snow, you can just leave them there until spring. But if you don't have snow and it does get frost for several weeks on end, it is useful to bring them into a shed and let them thaw out for a night or two, and remember to water them. There is no need to remove wire from your tree before winter. It really doesn't hurt your tree. Be careful, however, if you wire your tree out in late fall and you get frost directly after it, that's when you can get damage on your branches. So be careful with freshly wired trees that are not completely dormant and heavy frost. But this tree has been wired over a month ago. That's no issue at all. Out of the wind and sun is a great way to keep your trees over winter. Now do not make the mistake of putting insulation below the pot. Actually, the soil below your pot helps keep your roots warm over winter. The soil cools down much less quickly than the air. So put your pots directly on the ground for the best insulation. And you can always put a cover over the roots. But putting it like this, in most climates, it's perfectly fine. Now, that being said, make sure you treat deadwood on trees with lots of deadwood and you clean up the trunk against algae before winter hits. That will make sure your tree is in better state in the early spring. Now, in fall, what do you do after that? If all the leaves have fallen, so not now, but later, you can start protecting it against lots and lots of diseases for the spring. What do you need to do to make sure that your trees do not die or suffer insect damage over winter? Because yes, we think over winter nothing is alive, but that is not the case. You have a lot of insects that overwinter on your bonsai and they can do damage during winter. Particularly susceptible to damage are junipers and yews. They attract scale. And you don't see them because typically these insects have a similar color as the branches. So what you need to do is you need to spray these trees with a winter spray. Now, what is a winter spray? You have fundamentally two different types. One of them is using the lime sulfur that you also put on your deadwood, and spray your tree with the solution of this before it goes into winter storage. The other option is to use a winter wash, a winter soap. It literally is a soap or an oil dissolved in water and you spray your tree with that. The first uses the chemical composition to kill off any eggs and has a secondary effect of also stopping fungal infections from taking place. The second one, the oil dissolved in water, that just suffocates any eggs or any insects that are left on your trees. Now, if you use lime sulfur for a winter wash, dilute it in 1:100, so 1 milliliter per 100 milliliters of water. That means for a spray can like this, 15 milliliters in a spray can like this, 1:200. For oil, use 1:20, 5 milliliters into 1 liter. If you want to know more about a winter spray, I have a very nice little short on it. And of course, feel free to go and watch that. It's linked down below in the description. You can buy a commercial winter wash or you can make it yourself. If you want to mix this yourself, this is what you do. Both of these sprays should be used before winter really hits. A day like the day that I have today, temperature is about 10 Celsius at the moment, it is dry, it's ideal to spray your trees. Mind you, the trees in this video are still very green. We have had a very warm fall, so it is still too early to spray. It is also too early to pack the trees away. First the leaves need to come down, then I can clean off the root surface and I can spray all the trees and put them away for shelter, either in a corner of my yard or in my shed, or until the weather cools down enough. Because in my climate, I usually just leave my trees in place for most of the winter. This is also the time to consider whether you want to remove sacrifice branches. If you remove them while the tree is turning color, it is still time to cut it down and the tree can still compartmentalize before winter really hits. However, this year our winter is late, we're almost in November and it is still not winter. So I am not going to cut them anymore. I'm going to cut them maybe next summer. Evergreens, like pines and junipers, do not really like oil, especially when it's warm, dry and sunny. So be careful when you spray these that you don't subject them to heat and sun for a couple of days. After a couple of days and a couple of rainstorms, your insect problem has been cleared and the tree is ready for a normal place again. Now, if you are spraying rough bark species, Pay lots of attention to the cracks, to the crevices, make sure that they get completely soaked also. That will stop eggs and overwintering insects from surviving the winter, and your trees will enter spring in a much better state. Now, if your winters do get a lot colder than -10 or -15 Celsius in Fahrenheit, you need to take alternative measures. Then it is really good to take your trees inside into a shed. It doesn't need to be heated as long as it doesn't drop down as much as outside, and protect your trees in that way. These deep temperatures can really damage your trees independently of the species. Some species will be okay. Pines often are okay. Picea can stand it. But many species that we use for bonsai, Japanese maple, ginkgo bonsai, they do start to suffer at those temperatures. So, in general, what I do, I live in a temperate climate that is not all that cold. -20 Celsius is really a spike for an overnight. If it turns that cold, it is usually not more than 24 hours or just a few hours one night. So most of my winters, -10, -15 is a regular low for me. That's not very cold. So for me, the trees, they stay just outside. They stay in their regular spot most of the time. Except for the tropicals, they are already mostly inside. Some of them are now in the greenhouse waiting for the temperatures to drop further, and then they'll go inside. My Mediterranean species, overnight frost into the shed, but the rest just stays on their stands as they are. And only when temperatures hit -5 or below, then I take them off the shelves, I take them off the tables, and I put them on the ground into a sheltered corner. And that's where they'll stay until the weather improves for spring. I only move them once, I don't want to move them back and forth. I hardly ever bring trees into a shelter. This, of course, is different for species that have a lot of deadwood. Those I try to keep dry a little bit. So I have a few junipers with big pieces of deadwood, and those I might shelter. They do need light over winter, even though they're almost frozen. So typically that means in a greenhouse, under a roof. Guess I don't need to water much more anymore this year. Might as well put it away. This is pretty much how you can protect your bonsai in winter. On the one hand, against the winter. On the other hand, against the insects. This was Jelle, growing bonsai, wishing you a good winter, and see you in the next video. Keep growing bonsai.